Hello everyone and welcome to Now You're Playing with Power, a Nintendo podcast. My name is NBZ and joining me on this episode, number 22 as it so happens to be, a man who is bedraggled and worn out and half dead as a result of completing a triathlon. One might say the Triforce of sporting events.
Triforce of sporting events.
It is, it's Bally. How are you doing, Bally?
Hello everyone, I'm feeling a little stiff and very sunburned actually. I didn't put on any sun cream and got absolutely fried.
Yeah.
And I have a tri-suit marks all over
no.
Like, it's a hilarious looking tan line, but seeing as this is a radio show, I guess we don't have to talk about that. So
no, we don't, because no one can see us.
Exactly.
It's all about the listening experience, and we have a listening experience for you today. So, Bally, why don't you let the kind folks at home know what's going to be going on?
So we're going to talk about what we've been playing, and then, as normal, we're going to do some of your emails and see what you've written in to us with. And then finally we're going to talk about gaming with younger gamers. So we're talking maybe, I don't know what ages, 9 to 14-ish range.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And sort of how gaming has changed since we were that age, because we're now early 20s, and I guess it has changed quite a bit actually, but we'll get into all those glorious details later.
Certainly, and should be a pretty interesting topic. So yeah, I guess before we get into all that, we're just going to start off with our first usual segment, what we've been playing in the past couple of weeks. And I know, Bally, you have been jumping into a Nintendo IP that you have not really touched before. So why don't you let people know about that?
Yes, this is another Nintendo classic, actually, and it is of a franchise that I've never properly tried, apart from one game a tiny bit, which is difficult to explain, but that is Star Fox 64 3D. So yeah, I've played a tiny bit of Star Fox Adventures in the past on the GameCube, but that's it, and that, by all accounts, is not a Star Fox game. So what did I think of Star Fox 64? I really liked it, but there were some negatives that bugged me. I guess probably the biggest thing about the game is that the mission structure. So there's multiple routes to how you can complete the game, and to access those multiple routes you take different exits during the stage. But unlike, say, a game like, I don't know, New Super Mario Bros, where the exits, they're kind of hidden, but you can kind of find them. There are certain levels of Star Fox I've found where I don't see how it's possible to even work out the secret exits without looking at a guide.
Right, you need to have your Nintendo Power handy in order to actually find out what you're supposed to do in order to fulfill the criteria,
yeah,
right?
So, I mean, I purposefully went into the main missions blind, and I said, right, I'm just going to complete this game beginning to end, see what path I randomly go on, and see what happens. So I played it, and then I got to the end, and it turns out I took the easiest route possible. I took the route that if you complete the missions, well, there's certain missions where you actually kind of fail the mission, but by failing the mission you then take that you take a certain route because you failed the mission, but it tells you yeah, right.
So dying or whatever is actually consequential in the long run.
Yeah, well,
so you're going to basically have two forking paths, and you're going to go. It's like the Zelda timeline, isn't it? If Link dies, then it's the triple layer thing.
I mean,
but,
you're not dying. It's more like Slippy Toad got caught by the some bad guy.
Star Wolf? Is the enemy of this game Star Wolf? Is that how it shakes out?
Two enemies of this game. So the main enemy is Andros. And
the evil Andros, indeed.
You are a mercenary team called Star Fox, and you are entrenched in this battle between the dogs and the monkeys. so Andros is the monkeys, and Sergeant
Pepper?
Colonel
Peppy?
No, not Pep. No, it's Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah.
And Peppy is a hare, but Sergeant Pepper is a hound, and he's like the Colonel. Or maybe it's Colonel Pepper. And I think it's Sergeant Pepper. It is Sergeant Pepper, but I read somewhere that there's some old Japanese folklore that's like a fight between a monkey and a dog, and that's where he got the idea for these two sides.
Okay.
But anyway, it's basically a bit like the Empire. Well, it's not. That's a bad comparison, as we're gonna say, like
Well,
the Empire.
I guess it is like more Star Warsy than any other, Nintendo IP out there.
Yes,
so
it
you can
is
draw
very Star
parallels.
Warsy, and I will come to that for sure. But yeah, so you're Star Fox, you're a mercenary group who works for let's just call him Sergeant Pepper because I can't remember the name. Sergeant Pepper, and yeah, you're a team needing to defeat Andros, and that's basically it. And you're flying around the galaxy, uh, clearing Andros's forces off different planets as well as in space, and Andros comes up with dastardly robots and monsters, and there's some really epic bosses in this game. There seems to be like pretty much a boss for every stage, I think. Um, and yeah, basically, what was I trying to say? The structure of this game is that you play each level, like I said, there's loads of different paths. There's a boss at every ending, at the end of every level, I should say, and then there's the final boss with Andros, and you can do the whole game in less than 2 hours.
So what did you think of that when you went through for the first time and the game ended? Were you like, huh? That's weird. Like that's kind of short. Or what's going on here? Or did you have the pre-knowledge that there were the branching paths and everything?
I knew that there were branching paths. I had no idea how long the first run through would take me. I wasn't really surprised at all, really. I thought, I've played a good chunk of game right now. I've not played a ton, but yeah, that's cool. And I really want to now go and see the other paths. So then after that, I did the middle path, and then finally, no, actually, I did the hardest path, although it took me a number of tries to do the hardest path, and then I did the middle path after that. And I've done the other. I think I've done the easiest path back through a few more times to try and get medals. But I should say that the score. The score attack is completely separate to the main mission mode, and they've added that since the original N64 version. So you can just access any level you like at any time and try and go for a separate group of medals. So they keep the medals separate. So you have your score attack medals, which are like gold, silver, bronze, and then you have the main mission levels, which are just basically complete a level getting a lot of hits. So like hits as in hits on ships. That's how you get points in this game.
Right. Okay.
So in order to get medals on the main mission games, you have to get a certain number of hits by defeating enemies and also keep all three team members alive. So that's the bit that really feels like Star Wars, in my opinion, are your teammates and the chatter and the constant sort of banter between the four of members of your team.
Yeah, I was going to get to this because it is a very curious aspect of Star Fox is the voice acting, right? It's not something that is very common in many Nintendo games, but Star Fox was one of the first, and it's kind of goofy, it's really weird, but I'm kind of interested in your take on it and how you thought it kind of fitted into the entire plot and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I've played I actually didn't realize that I'd played games like Star Fox before playing, but then I thought to myself, actually, I've played Rogue Squadron, Rebel Strike, I've played the original Rogue Squadron a bit, I've played Battle for Naboo, which is the same team, so I've had experience of kind of Star Wars-esque flying games that have voice acting, and they say, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, or shoot down this, shoot down that, and in all of those games I've experienced, it's quite dry, and everything in those games is often quite grey because I mean that's just what Star Wars is like. It's the Empire. It's very grey. Star Fox just adds so much color in every single way to that kind of idea or that stereotype of that Star Wars idea of different planes flying around.
Yeah, it's just taking the sci-fi model really and blowing out.
Exactly, taking that sci-fi model, and it's so colourful in the sense that, yes, it is colourful. It is a very colourful game. It looks fantastic in 3D. I think this is my favourite. And I would compare it with maybe Pilot Wings in this way, although I think it nails the 3D better than Pilot Wings, is that, yeah, the 3D works really well. The colours are so vibrant. But one thing they changed that makes it just feel really enticing is that because it's got an extra screen, rather than sticking the head of the person talking on the top screen, they stick it on the bottom screen. So it genuinely feels like you're kind of flying a ship and then someone's popping up on the screen like talking to you, and just the fact that they are the face of the person in your team talking to you pops up. That just makes the game so much. You really feel like they're there with you, and it's really cool. And that's something that the Rogue Squadron games never do. Is like the head of, I don't know, Biggs or Luke Skywalker just pops up, like talking to you. That just never happens.
But it's goofy though, right? Like it's not really very self-serious, I'd imagine, in a Star Fox game.
It is goofy, but I love it because it's goofy, sort of thing. It's like okay, this hair is speaking to me, and then you just kind of go, why is the Toad always getting caught by everyone all the time? Like Slippy Toad is easily,
he sucks.
He's
an
easily
idiot.
the one that gets caught the most. Because what happens in almost every level is your teammates will be talking to you, and they'll say, Fox, get this guy off my tail or something. Or Slippy will be like, help me, Fox, I'm in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And you have to fly over to Slippy. You can see the dudes flying behind him, and you have to shoot them. And that's the other thing to say, is that there is friendly fire in this game. So you have to be really careful not to shoot your own teammates.
Wow, so you can take them down yourself.
Yeah, you can take your teammates down yourself. And if you have the fully charged lasers, which you get quite easily in this game, there's 2 laser power-ups, you can take out your teammate pretty damn quickly. And there's certain levels where they fly onto the screen on purpose to like fool you. So it's obviously it's the game fooling you. It's saying, oh, here's Peppy, and you start shooting, and then you're like, oh no, I'm doing damage to him. And they all have their like line when you shoot them. Like Falco's so like arrogant. He's just like, God, watch yourself, Fox, or look out, and Peppy's just like, oh, you're not as good as your dad. Like, he always talks about your dad because he was like, part of the story was that Peppy was part of Fox's dad's squadron or whatever,
right?
R-Wings.
And isn't there some weird tenuous link to F-Zero with James McCloud, who's supposed to be his father, who's actually a human in that game?
Yeah, I mean, you've basically explained the whole link. There's not much more to it than that. He basically, James McCloud is Fox's dad, and he wears sunglasses. Big spoiler, although this is a very old game, you actually see James McCloud at the end of the game.
Oh, okay.
As
That's
in,
cool.
like, you like don't know. I think he's meant to be a ghost, and it's very reminiscent of like Obi-Wan Kenobi being dead at the end of episode 4, and he's like guiding you out of Venom, Andros's planet, when it's exploding. And it's just, if you are a Star Wars fan and a Nintendo fan, which I have been this whole time, I think this is such a good game to play, because it's really easy to pick up and play. The tutorial is great. I've never played the original, so I don't know all the ins and outs of what they've added and taken away and stuff, but by all accounts that I've read and reviews and video reviews and things, they all think that this is a much improved version of the original. The added score attack, the added multiplayer, which I've not actually experienced yet, but it looks kind of cool.
Yeah, which I actually have played before, and it's kind of a fun little mode there. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it works. It's functional. It's a shame it's not online, but it doesn't really matter because it's the single player where this game scores highly, and it's just got so much character. And I say this about so many Nintendo games, but it's got so much polish. It's really, really well done. The criticisms that say it's too short, I would disagree with, because I've just pumped 13 hours into this game and it cost me 20 quid. I think that's a really fair deal.
Yeah,
I think it's got 16 missions in total, which isn't that bad. I mean,
how long are they though? Like, do the missions run you a decent amount of time? They're like 10-15 minutes or more than that?
Oh, way less than that. They're like maybe 3-4 minutes each. 5 minutes max. Yeah.
But I guess like the time sink comes from the challenge invested there, points.
Yeah, I mean, you will lose lives. it's an easy game to play, tough to master. It's
Sure.
really difficult to get medals. I've got 1 gold medal in total. I've got about 8 or 9 bronze and 1 and 2 silver, I think. And in the main missions, I've only got like 2 of the main game medals, but it's got so much replayability, and I'm really intrigued to like try out some other Star Fox game in the series. I should say this was co-developed by Q Games, which is headed by I forgot
Dylan
his name.
Cuthbert.
Dylan Cuthbert, who was behind the original Star Fox on the SNES and was actually one of the founding fathers, I guess you could call him, of Mode 7 and actual 3D graphics. So it's really cool that like his group are back working on this game. And I know that they worked on the DS version of this game, so that's probably the one I'm heading towards in terms of if I was going to try another one. But yeah. No, I was
Cool.
looking at loads of history of Star Fox, and there's
Nice.
an awful lot about Q Games and Dylan Cuthbert and Miyamoto kind of screwing him over a little bit.
Oh,
But
interesting.
yeah, so he also did. Q Games do a lot of stuff for other platforms like Sony and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they very recently at the Sony Gamescom, should I say, press conference, Dylan Cuthbert came on stage and announced a brand new IP that their studio is working on. I think it's called the Tomorrow Children.
Oh, cool.
It's really weird. It's like this Russian doll kind of art style, and it seems like a very kind of Minecrafty game. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. So yeah.
Do you think you'd give a Star Fox game a bash?
I mean, I'm gonna one day, aside
Yeah.
from Adventures, which I already own, which a lot of people don't really count as a Star Fox game because it really isn't, in all honesty. But I'm really interested in what they're going to be doing with this new Wii U one, because that is on the horizon, and
Yeah.
according to Miyamoto and his team, they want to turn it around in a year, even though a lot of people say it's like hardly even a concept at this point. But that's certainly something that would turn my head, if nothing else, and
Yeah,
I'd be interested to dive in at that point.
Yeah, I mean the Wii U version, like this Star Fox 64 3D has made the Wii U version a day one purchase for me personally because, I have read everywhere that Star Fox 64 3D is the best version of a Star Fox game you can get, that's out there at the moment, and
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I mean it came out at a time when the 3DS had very few games, but yeah, just fantastic game.
Awesome.
Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the mission structure, like I said, but overall, amazing game.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear, and certainly it's something that I am going to look to try and get into in the future. But I'm going to continue along the sci-fi theme, I guess, by talking about a game I've been playing on the PC, more specifically my laptop recently, as I am still in London. I'm going back tomorrow, so I'll be back to my nice beefy desktop then. But I'm going to talk about The Swapper. So this is a really fascinating indie game that came out last year, I believe, and I heard a lot about it because Patrick Klepek on the Bombcast, he was going on about it and saying like it's one of the best games he's played all year, and yet no one was talking about it. And very recently it came to the PS4 and PS3 like 2 weeks ago, and it is in fact set for a Wii U release later this year. So it's pertinent to a lot of you guys who are listening because if you're interested in Nintendo platforms and you own a Wii U and no other console, like Bally here.
I am.
Yes, indeed. So it's going to be coming to that system. And I think it's actually going to work really well on Wii U, and I'll explain why in a second. But the premise behind the Swapper is it's a puzzle platformer. And when I say puzzle platform, I put a heavy emphasis on the puzzle part, because you are essentially this spacesuit and you have this device which is called the Swapper, and it allows you to create clones of yourself and then swap into those clones. So you zap a button and you transfer yourself from one suit to the other. And the way they structure the game is it's based around this planet that you've been, you find yourself in or you wake up in. I can't quite remember the beginning because I started it a while ago, but you end up there and you're wandering around, and it's structured similarly to a Metroid game in terms of the map, but not in terms of progression, because you're not really getting upgrades or anything like that. You're just trying to finish puzzles to unlock gates to new areas, and so you're not really adding much to your arsenal. It's more just thinking things out and figuring out ways to get through places. So it's really, really interesting because the amount of different things they do with this mechanic, where you are creating a clone of yourself, swapping into it, and then, trying to move from one place to another with a limited amount of moves, because you can only create, I think, up to 5 different versions of yourself at once. So you sometimes get to points where you're like, oh, I need one more of those, but I don't have enough zap left, so I need to figure out a way of killing one of the other clones so that I get another one available, so then I can make one. It becomes this really complicated thing, and it's a game that makes you feel really, really smart, because the puzzles are designed in such a way that you're like, wow, okay, I could approach it from this angle or this angle. In actuality, you probably can only approach it from one angle, but it does make you feel like you are just some kind of genius figuring these things out. You're like, oh, look at that, I interlinked all these things and managed to get it working.
And it does it by like colored lights, right? Like I've seen you play it a bit, and it's kind of, there's red and blue lights, and each one of those means something different. And it's like, how do I explain? The blue light means you can't put your clone in the light, or is that red, or what?
So they do have different restrictions placed on you. So you'll walk into a room and there's like 7 different lights, or in actuality about 3. Red light allows you to place a clone, but not to swap into it. So you can make one, but you can't zap to it. Blue light allows you to zap, but you can't make a clone in it. So you'll have these scenarios where you're like, hey, that thing's up there and it's easy to get to, but I am being barricaded by these specific patterns, and you need to really figure out different ways of getting through it. So it does become quite a challenge as you're, working your way through these puzzles and thinking of different ways to get to the, end goal.
What was the longest you got stuck on one puzzle?
Oh man, it is a case.
Did you have to go to the guide religiously, or just occasionally, or
no? I
never?
Really didn't. I did have to much closer to the end when things were ramping up, and they introduced new mechanics, like basically being able to walk on the ceiling. So there are some of these panels that will reverse your gravity, and you're suddenly walking on the ceiling. And so when you're upside down, you're only able to create clones that are also upside down, and when you're on the floor, you're only able to create ones which are the right way up. So it puts you in a lot of those weird scenarios that, create these puzzle rooms to go on for a long time, and you have to do a very intricate set of moves, and if you fuck up once, well, you might as well reload the room, because it's going to take you right back to the beginning anyway. So it does become a little bit tricky there. I wouldn't say I spent a huge amount of time on any single area, maybe 20 minutes at the most, and then I would either get annoyed and just be like, no, I'm going to put this down, I'm going to come back to it, or something like that, and it would essentially allow me to take a fresh, bring fresh eyes to it afterwards. And that happens a lot in puzzle games, where you kind of take a break and you come back, and all of a sudden the solution comes to you, thinking of it from a different perspective. So that did happen in some situations, but it wasn't overly tough. It just got to certain points where I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna go to the internet. YouTube is my friend, and I just want to get through these, because otherwise I'm going to be stuck here all day.
Is it a particularly long game?
I mean, it took me around 5 to 6 hours, I'd say. So, as far as indie games go, it's kind of standard length. It's your $15, $10 game. But I think that the bar of quality is so high. It's extremely well polished, and the art style is incredible. It's this kind of claymation look to it, right? It's a similar thing, I would say. I wouldn't directly compare it to Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, because that's much more plasticine, but it has this kind of clay, kind of very realistic feel to it. It's very tangible, and it works in that setting so well. There's, the atmosphere is so well introduced, because it's really dark, and there's not much light around, and there's not much music. It's a lot of ambient noise, and it does have a very Metroid feel to it, despite the fact that you're not shooting enemies, that there's no enemy in the game at all, and it's dialogue stuff and that kind of stuff happening. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating game, and I I really enjoyed it. It took me a while to get through because I put it down for a bit and I was playing other stuff, and then I picked it back up and I wanted to do it on my laptop because I couldn't transfer saves and different things happened with it.
So how much do you guesstimate it would be on Wii U when I'm wanting to buy this?
I'd say maybe
tenner.
I would say more close to like maybe the $12.99, $11.99 range. It's a weird pricing model we have in the UK sometimes when games come across digitally, and you end up with kind of strange numbers. So I'd put it around the kind of middle range there.
Okay.
But it's well worth picking up. It's a really high quality game, and I think that's the case with a lot of independent games these days. Is some of them, yeah, they're very throwaway. They're not that great, but there are a few which have such care and attention to detail, and there's so much passion and love put into these, and you can tell it's so well designed. You're just thinking out these puzzles. You're like, wow, someone must have been super smart to create this scenario to make me feel like a genius, and that's something that it does extraordinarily well. And the genre doesn't have that many games in it, so as far as that goes, I would say it is a must buy. And if you got a Wii U laying around, then be ready because it is coming at some point very near in the future. So yeah, it's great. Swapper, remember that name, the Swapper. It's I don't know, it's there for your potential playing enjoyment. All right, well, that I feel is going to be the end of our segment here. So we are going to return after the break with a look at your listener emails that you have sent to us, the electronic mails, and we'll see you in a bit. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, to take some emails that you have sent to us to our very fanciful email address, which is Bally.
NYPPQuestions@gmail.com. Keep them coming, we're running out.
We are getting low. That mailbag is starting to look a little bit lonely. He would like to plump himself up and get warm for the winter, so if you could fill him up, he would be most appreciated. So go to your email client, type us an email, and we may read it on the show. And Bally has the first one for this week.
So the first person filling up the mailbag this week is Saint. Hi guys, I recently got a free download for Metroid, the original, and I haven't started it yet, but it brought me to mind the question, which Metroid game is your favourite and why? I don't remember if you answered this before, but what are your favourite genres of games to play? I know I'm going to sound nostalgic, but I still love older games despite the crappy graphics and mechanics, but in new games it kind of lessens games to me. How do you guys feel about graphics and mechanics and how they affect your opinions on games? Thanks for all the great content, guys.
All right, thank you, Saint, for that email. We have a few different questions there, so why don't we take them in order? So, Bally, you this year have played 3 Metroid games, and
Yes.
before that you had played none. So
Yes.
you actually can answer this question at this point. So which of those 3 would you say was your favourite, Bally?
The one that left me feeling like, wow, that was an experience, and wow, I would one day love to play that again, is probably Metroid Prime.
Yeah. I expected that.
It hit me the hardest, although I say play it again. I say I would play it again, but really I'd probably do a 2D one again, just because they're a bit shorter.
Totally.
They're a bit more straightforward. They're quite quicker, faster pace, much faster pace, I should say. So maybe they are more replayable, and I do still need to play 2 and 3 in the Metroid Prime trilogy. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's an obvious one. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It is Metroid Fusion, and I mean, the reasoning behind that is probably not the most sound, but it's a lot of it is nostalgia. You know, it's one of those games that I played when I was younger.
Because you've not played Metroid Prime.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. It's just there are so many details about Metroid Fusion that keep me coming back to it. It is a fast-paced propulsion of a game where it just throws you along and you are just boss after area after power up after upgrade after just non-stop. It's a bullet train of a Metroid game, and that's why I like it, because you're not kind of wandering around and getting lost. You always know where to go, and you are just, you know, that graph, as it were, of Samus's power level just increasing and slowly getting up there it's such a satisfying one, and just one that I really love. And it has so many great areas and so many memorable things about it. The sound design is one of my favorites, where it's just, you know, those clicks when you start to press down the missile and you have it locked and loaded, just the satisfying click sounds and the beam sounds. It's just kind of drilled into my brain at this point, and there's no letting go. So, you know, Metroid Fusion, it's my game. It's the one I go to.
I mean, I love it, but it's just not quite as good as the others.
Well, you know, opinions, man. Yeah. Everyone has them. So,
favorite genres.
Okay, yeah. What ones do you usually gravitate towards, Bally?
See, that's the thing about Nintendo, is they cover quite a lot of different genres, and I feel like I like a lot of different Nintendo games that, like I said, cover lots of different genres. So I guess if it was one above others, I like adventure games, but adventure can come under, it can have shooting elements or platforming elements, or puzzle elements. So I'd say adventure games that have a mixture of elements are probably my favorite games.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a really vague answer, but
these days it is much harder to nail down the kind of exact genre of games. You know, genres, I feel, are an element of or a thing that came out of the games media earlier on, when they needed to categorize things and break them down and say, this is this game and this belongs here, and, you know, this should be here because it contains these elements. I just feel it's a lot more meaningless these days. You know, games cross pollinate and do different things all the time, so it's a lot harder to nail it down to one specific. I thought you'd bring up racing games, because, you know, the racing genre is one that you do like to dip in a lot more to than I do, and you're a lot better at it than I am. So.
Yeah, no, I agree, but again, my favorite racing games are probably the Nintendo racing games that I've played. So Mario Kart, F-Zero, Wave Race there. Yeah, I do enjoy the Nintendo umbrella and the games with the genres within that umbrella. Of those, adventure games and racers are probably higher up than the others, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, I would kind of echo the sentiment of, I guess, the generic adventure style, you know, third-person game. You know, your Zeldas, your, I guess, to some degree, Uncharted is similar in that way. You know, it is categorized as a third-person shooter, but that game is, you know, so much more than that. It's more than some of its parts, and that's a big one for me. But again, platformers are huge on my radar. I am a massive fan of, you know, the really tough as nails platformers, you know, the Nintendo ones from every shape, flavor, and size, and you know, the 2D space is where I really feel at home and comfortable, and those are ones that I love. And then RPGs. I've really been getting big into RPGs much more recently. You know, I started off playing games because of an RPG. Pokemon was the first game I ever played, or at least not really the first game I ever played, but like, it was the first game that I really got into and owned, and was deeply entrenched in. And so I would say that I'm kind of, you know, coming to experience a lot more of the genre at this point, and having played stuff like Xenoblade and Final Fantasy 13 and all these massive, huge scope RPGs, it's something that I've come to appreciate a lot, and I'm looking to dive more into those. So that's what I would say as my favorite genres.
So I guess we can move on to the next question.
Well, he did have the last one, which what was he talking about?
Graphics and mechanics.
Right. So the breakdown of after time has been unkind to certain games, how they age, I guess, how graphics and mechanics age, and how they affect games as they get older.
I've got a really simple way that I feel defines this, in that I think that Super Nintendo games have easily aged far better than N64 games.
Totally.
And
yeah.
it's really difficult to, I mean, at the time everyone would have argued that N64 has better graphics than the Super Nintendo. But if you try and play them these days, I'd easily pick up A Link to the Past or Super Metroid, because it's just a nicer looking game than, for example, Ocarina of Time or the original Mario 64 3D, not 3D, goodness sake, the original Super Mario 64. So yeah, I just think that the N64 kind of, those games are really hard to go back and play.
I think it's not just the graphics angle. I think mechanically, Super Nintendo games are much more solid. A lot of it has to do with the era of 3D gaming coming into, its first iteration and people figuring things out. There are a lot of N64 games that control like absolute ass. Like, it is kind of hard to go back and try and play those, but stuff on the Super Nintendo is pretty silky smooth, and I would tend to agree. From the era of from Nintendo's first console through to their third, I would say that Super Nintendo, their second one, is the one that has aged the best. And when you're coming back through the ages, you get to GameCube and then to Wii, I do think that it becomes less important because graphics and mechanics are at a point there where they are solid enough that it doesn't really make a huge difference. But if we're talking about the really old days, then yeah, I tend to agree with you. But yeah, I don't know how we'll view GameCube games in 20 years' time. Will we think that they're as ugly as N64 games? I don't know.
I hope not.
It's all a matter of perspective. So there you go.
So the next question is from Elias. Hi guys, this time with a short question. Which genre should a new IP from Nintendo be? In your opinions, of course. So it could be something absolutely ridiculous. Greetings from Germany. P.S. If the listeners want to play a drinking game, they should take a sip every time NBZ says sure.
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 Sure. I actually have been noticing that I tend to do that a lot when you're talking, Bally. I just kind of say like, sure, yeah, sure, yeah, sure. And I've been cutting it out of the podcast in editing recently. So if you notice less of that,
the fact that it's still getting through to Elias is hilarious. That you've been editing it out and he's still saying, you always say sure. But anyway.
Yeah, well,
that is funny.
Trying to stop, but I don't know. I'd like to try and contribute to discussion if I I don't want to butt in.
You could do the more American
Yeah, indeed. Wait, so what was the question? I've completely forgotten at this point after that
Which
tangent.
IP should Nintendo, what should they do?
What should they do?
No, not what genre should their new IP be from?
Alright, Nintendo should make a platformer. It'd be innovative. No, I'm actually somewhat serious about that. Now, when I say Nintendo should make a platformer, I think that they should come into the modern era of platformers. And what I mean by that is get rid of lives, get rid of these really long levels that last far too... I'm talking 2D platformers, by the way, not 3D. Get rid of these levels which are long and make things short. Basically, what I want is Nintendo to do their take on Super Meat Boy. Do a hard as balls platformer and make it something super intense and crazy. Because, to be quite honest, I've enjoyed games like that a lot more than a lot of Nintendo's recent offerings when it comes to 2D platforming games. What do you think about that, Bally? I know you haven't really played many masochistic platformers, as it were, but...
No, and as someone who has played quite a lot of Nintendo 2D platformers, I quite like their current formula. But that's just because I've not played masochistic 2D platformers. So I mean, I am keen to try out something like a Super Meat Boy or Bit Trip Runner.
Or even VVVVVVV.
Yeah, or maybe that, but it's kind of lower down my list because it just looks so insanely hard. But yeah, I do need to try those before I can have a proper opinion, I would say. I was going to say I'd love to just see Nintendo finally just do an open world game.
Well, Zelda's coming, man.
I know, I think that's great that it's going to potentially have elements. And I have bought Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Yeah, that's there, ready.
So that is probably going to be the first proper open world game I'm going to play, other than, I don't know, like Simpsons Hit and Run, which was a long time ago.
That's stretching talking about open world games, I guess, for the time, but at this point it's very, very antiquated. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm excited. Something other than Zelda that's open worldy, or just do another racing game, something that's not Mario Kart, something, I don't know. Yeah. Right. Anyway.
Alright, vent your frustrations.
Sure.
Okay.
So now we have a question. Or did you want to say one more thing?
No, I've got nothing else to add.
Okay. We got a question from Daniel Bunzelmeyer. Hello again, NBZ and Bally. Listening once again to my favourite Brits talking about my favourite subject. You mentioned the Game Boy, and I knew that I had to write in. I'm about 24 and a half years old, so I am just a bit younger than the Game Boy. I'm not exactly sure when my parents bought the Game Boy for me, but I can't recall any memories when I didn't have it, so I must have been very young. Until Pokemon Blue was out for a little while, the only games I had for it were Kirby's Pinball Land, one of the sharpest pinball games I've ever played, and Tom and Jerry Platforming. I played the crap out of those two games when I was little. But by the way, my Game Boy is still at home, and even though the glue holding the screen cover on has given out, the thing will still play games. When Pokemon Blue came out, my parents, like every other person's parents in the entire world, weren't huge on the game. I didn't really know what it was, but my friend at school had it. He ended up with a second copy somehow, and he gave it to me on a Friday. Now that I think about it, I'm not entirely certain that that game wasn't stolen. I guess it's true what they say, the first one's always free. That was the night I went to stay with my cousins. I was 8 or 9, I think. I went to bed really early that night just so I could get up before everyone else, little before 5 a.m, and get to play brand new Pokemon Blue. I started a new game and like millions and millions of other kids was hooked. I still am to this day, as my maxed out timer on Pokemon Y indicates. P.S. Bally, I had that exact same magnifying light attachment. It was pretty cool. And NBZ, I later got a light like you had, called a worm light, if I remember correctly, when the other one broke. And you could bend the wires to keep it out of your view. So it wasn't that bad.
Yes, I agree. I don't know. At the time, that light was a little bit annoying. But if you think about it, it wasn't awful. It did the job. Always nice to hear some stories though of that era, and we kind of shared ours on the Game Boy. And mine feels very similar to, with the Pokemon
that
Blue,
was very similar, wasn't it?
Yeah, just waking up early in the morning and just being like, oh, I'm sitting here and I'm just gonna go through this, and it was kind of a magical thing. I'm gonna say so. Yeah,
send us more of your Game Boy stories.
Yeah,
they're nice. They're good to hear. So yeah, thanks for that email. Next email is from Dudbun. Howdy Zed and Bally. 'Tis me yet again with only a small question. With the announcement of the new Mario Kart 8 DLC today, this was a while ago, it got me thinking, what do you think the future of Nintendo DLC would be like? And what would you want? Imagine the new things like more people in the next Smash, or anything like that. And also, what are your opinions on DLC in general? I'd like to know. Anyways, loving what you're doing with all of this, so keep it up. You're the best.
Okay. DLC has been an interesting topic for Nintendo because they have done it in a real variety of ways over the past couple of years, and it's super interesting to kind of follow that and see where they're going with it, because they are doing different tactics and they're trying different things, and Mario Kart 8 is just another branch of that. how do you feel they've approached DLC, Bally? What are your opinions here?
As someone who has, to my knowledge at least, never downloaded any paid for DLC other than the Mario Kart, which I've pre-ordered, I think that they've handled it pretty well. To be honest, I was tempted to buy the Pikmin 3 DLC, but I felt I might as well complete the missions I'm stuck on before buying more missions. But it's really nice having the option there that if I ever did go crazy and complete all the missions, that I could just go out and download some more.
And how well is that stuff passed out in Pikmin 3? I completely forgot that was something that had access to it. Do you know that if it's like a level pack or how it's kind of broken down?
Yeah, so you've got two modes in Pikmin. You've got the story mode and the mission mode. The mission mode is made up of two different types of missions: score attack and enemy attack, where you basically defeat enemies. The other one, you just collect stuff as fast as possible, I think. And it basically gives you brand new levels for both of those modes within mission mode. I think it gives you, I want to say, 12 levels in total, and I think you already have 12 or 18. I can't remember. It gives you a good at least 10 hours of gameplay, I would say. So it's cool. It's nice having it there. I do think that the Mario Kart 8 DLC stands head and shoulders above the rest in terms of what Nintendo have done for DLC, because I mean,
I think from a value perspective, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it day one. I've got the coloured Yoshis, as I said on our news podcast, and I'm a sucker for that because I just love Mario Kart, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I think Nintendo, my experience with Nintendo DLC thus far has mainly been through Fire Emblem and the way that they, did different packs of maps, which, I don't know, I feel like is a more traditional way to approach it and kind of pass things out into small chunks and give it out that way, which is okay. That it does the job, I guess, and you do kind of get to pick and choose which ones you want. It's a little bit annoying because what it does do is it locks certain things away behind the DLC. So there are a couple of character classes that you can only get access to if you buy the DLC. There are a couple of abilities and skills that you can only get access to if you buy the DLC. And I mean, the thing with Fire Emblem is it's not a multiplayer game, at least not in the traditional sense of going online and having competitive matches or anything like that. And so, they're not kind of destroying that environment by making specific really important things locked away, but it's a little bit annoying that they've done that. It just means that you have to go out of your way to get them.
One thing I do like about Nintendo DLC, now maybe I'm in the wrong here, but as far as I know and things that I've read, they develop and plan all their DLC after the launch of the initial game, and they don't like, for example, these Mario Kart tracks will most likely still be in the process of being designed and won't have been designed before the original game was released. So it's kind of like, okay, we've released that, and now we're going to work on something new. And I feel like if say they're designing plenty of Smash characters that are all going to be kept behind a pay barrier, that we'll be able to access much later. That would be a bit of a shame, but I can tell that there's going to be a few characters missing from the roster that people are going to be like, really sad that character's not there. And I think there's the potential that fan pressure and like outrage at, how could you not have included I don't know, Ridley, and then the fans just get together. I think Nintendo might then realize, actually maybe let's just put him in the game, he can be DLC later. And I think just like the characters and tracks in Mario Kart, why not do characters and stages for Smash? It would make sense, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, on your point of Nintendo creating DLC, post-release, that is kind of the point for a lot of companies, and that's the general idea behind it, is you finish the game first and then you have additional stuff. The trouble with DLC in general across the board is that a lot of companies will just take parts of the game out and keep it as DLC, and then they'll have day one DLC. There's a lot of horrible business practices going on, and
But I
I
feel
think
like
for the most
Nintendo
part
don't do
Nintendo have
that,
avoided
yeah.
that stuff. So it's good that they aren't kind of digging their heels there and kind of, experimenting. I mean, you've got things like Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, which is this weird free-to-play experiment that you can get discounts on the games if you play it in the correct way, and it's really fascinating that they've approached it in that sense. And again, with the Super Luigi U DLC, like, that's almost an entire expansion pack, that's kind of more of a traditional way of giving you more content by doing this really kind of premium thing where it's $20 instead of something like $5 or $10, and just giving you so much more content. So it's cool to see them kind of being in these experimental phases, but they are in general behind quite a bit in terms of catching up to other people and how this works. But you know what, I think they're doing a great job of it so far, and I've enjoyed their approach. And until they do something obnoxious and outrageous, then I'll continue to stick with the DLC as long as it's good. So yeah.
We're fans. It's good. Keep going.
They've done a good job. So
the final email of this week. Hi, my name is Victor Murched. Kinda hard last name to pronounce. I know, that's because my family comes from Syria and I am from Brazil. So first of all, I would like to thank you guys for the awesome show. It keeps me entertained in the office. Keep up the good work, all that good stuff, etc. I believe you guys recorded the last podcast before the videos of Shulk and Bowser Jr. were leaked, right? So I guess we can say it's pretty much real. Anyway, my question is, what characters do you believe are going to fill up the remaining spots? P.S. I love the music breaks. PS2. Shouts out to all my friends at the Facebook group Nintendo Brazil. PS3. The hype is real, guys. PS4. LOL. I really want Bandana Waddle Dee in Smash, but I know that's probably not going to happen in this version, sadly. But my hopes for Ridley are strong. That's what I like to see. Excellent. I have no idea who Bandana Waddle Dee is, but that sounds good. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for that email, Victor. That's if you're talking about obscure Nintendo characters, like a specific Kirby enemy with a bandana on his head, that really feels like a trophy as opposed to anything else. And even at a trophy, I would say it's a stretch. But yeah, we're getting really close here, Bal. You know what? This podcast is probably going to go out a couple of days before the Japanese release of Smash, after which the floodgates will open, and we will know pretty much everything there is to know, of course, until the Wii U version comes out. So what do you think, Bally? What are going to be the last remaining characters? After that leak, it looked like there are maybe 4 or 5 spots left.
Okay, so let's say there's 4 spots. Here comes Bally's masterful prediction. Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
I don't know what I'm going to say, but it's going to come out and it's going to be amazing. Right, okay, number 1. Waluigi!
Oh, jeez. Crazy.
Yeah. Number 2. Paper Mario.
Alright.
Number 3. I'm struggling with this one. Someone from Zelda. So I'm thinking like Demise or Ganon.
No.
And then number 4, it's just got to be Ridley.
Yeah, Ridley. Good old Ridley. Yep.
So,
after all these leaks and all the information and people saying stuff, I don't think
Ridley's going to be in it.
I'm really torn. I'm just so torn about it. There's arguments both ways, and there's some interesting stuff being brought up, but I hope. I still have hope. It's just kind of very.
But it's
shallow.
crazy to think that there's still about 4 slots left potentially, even after the leak with the Dog and Duck and Bowser Jr. and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, people have been saying maybe Mewtwo's coming back.
That'd be cool.
I've heard talk of Dixie Kong, who I think would be interesting, despite the fact that it seems like, hey, it's another kind of Mario universe characters, hailing more from the Donkey Kong side of things.
Yeah.
But when you think about Dixie Kong and how she plays in those games, in the Donkey Kong Country games, it's very different from Diddy, and she has her whole hairspin thing. I think you could do some interesting stuff with her if she was put into the game.
Everyone at home, NBZ, wants to know, who are your 4?
I would say, I'm gonna go with Mewtwo.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Dixie Kong.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Ridley.
Okay.
And fuck it, YOLO, Professor Layton number 4. Come at me.
Well, I think I kind of, if I had to bet money on which one of us is right, I'd put my money on you, to be honest.
Maybe, yeah. Just about. We'll see. It's coming out. It's coming soon, and maybe by the time we post this, people who have got early copies of the games will have leaked everything already. So everything we have said
they will have played the game for a solid 24 hours, just trying to unlock every single character.
Yep, pretty much. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an exciting week, Bally, for Smash Brothers fans, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Or maybe King of Red Lions.
Bally,
he just goes on a wave. It's surf.
I'm taking this segment. I'm ending it before we get any crazier and go off the deep end, because we really are.
Mark my words, people. King of Red Lions coming to Smash 4. He's coming. You can't cut me off. I'm gonna.
Next segment. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.
And we are back for the third and final segment of our show. This week we are going to be discussing a pretty cool topic. So, Bali, why don't you go ahead and jump into it?
Yeah, so we're going to talk a bit about younger gamers, and specifically both of us have quite young cousins, or in my case they're second cousins. And so over the last few weeks, my cousins stayed with me, and NBZ, you were down in London with your cousins. So
yes, I was indeed.
And all these cousins sort of have a bit of experience with video games, and we just thought we'd talk a bit about what they're into, their sort of habits of gaming, and what sort of games we tried to get them into, because we felt that the games that they were already into they're not the high caliber they should be.
You might say, yeah.
Exactly. So start with my cousins, I guess. So my 12-year-old cousin, his gaming habits. So he's quite PC orientated. He's got a laptop.
Sure.
And his number one game at this point in time is World of Tanks.
Which is really interesting. When you told me that, I was like, what? I was kind of expecting the whole Minecraft thing. That's the obvious choice. There's a lot of kids down with the Minecraft. Well, but World of Tanks is like, wow, that's a little bit of out left field.
Yeah, but I mean, a year ago when I saw him, he was mainly into Minecraft. So he's obviously evolved a bit.
Okay.
And he does own a DS Lite. He was given a long time ago. And he owns all the Pokemon games on DS. Yeah. So the Diamond and the Pearls, the Black and the Whites, 1 and 2. He owns all 6 of them, I think, or maybe about 5 of them.
Does he have Heart Gold and Soul Silver as well?
He's got 1 of those, yes. So I think in total he does have about 5 or 6. And then he has the most depressing Game Boy Advance collection I think I've ever seen. I mean, he might even listen to this podcast, but yeah, so he got these games from someone else that was just offloading their games to him, I think, basically. And Yeah, there was a lot of Ubisoft titles that end in the letter Z
Yeah,
or Z,
yeah.
as the Americans would say, and yeah, kind of like babies, puppies. Uh, yeah, I don't really want to talk about
Let's
those.
not let's not
But
dwell on
yeah,
that subject, I guess.
so I mean that's the thing is that he's got his DS Lite, but the main game and pretty much the only game he plays on it is Pokemon.
So I guess similar to how we were in the Game Boy era when we didn't really venture that far outside of the
Yeah.
Pokemon sphere. So yeah, very similar. And I think that's one of those things you kind of get locked into that system, and it's because those games are familiar to you and you know what you like, and you kind of just want to keep going with it. I'm kind of interested into. Did he tell you how he got into World of Tanks, or like where that came from, and why he
I
decided
think
to?
it was just like I think his mum's a little against video games, like all mums are to some degree, and I guess World of Tanks is free and online, and he could just log onto the internet with his laptop that he got and just download it and
Sure.
play it. And he was like properly into it with the headset and like talking to other people and stuff, and I was just kind of like,
Interesting.
wow, that's like a gaming experience I've just never done or like gotten into is like PC online gaming at all. So he was like totally into it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I feel kind of similar to what he did at that time because I was messing around with some, like MMOs like RuneScape at the time, and that was an online free-to-play thing, and I could access it easily, and it didn't take a really heavy-end computer to run. It would run in the client on the internet. I'm not sure if World of Tanks is like a download thing or if it works in a browser, but
I think it's a download, but I'm not sure.
okay. Does he have a
Um,
relatively beefy laptop then, or from what you could tell, did it look decent?
yeah, it all seemed to be running quite smoothly. I mean, I don't know anything about the sort of the tech of laptops and stuff like that, but it seemed to be running okay on our not very fast internet. And
So he probably would have received that as a gift then, for a birthday or Christmas. Because I can't
yeah,
imagine him
yeah,
having the
exactly.
capital to pluck
Yeah,
up for a really high-end machine.
yeah, no, it seemed to be working fine. And he was also into some other, which was a play and browser game I seem to remember, and it was some Civilization-based game.
Right.
I can't actually remember the name of it, but it was free as well. So yeah, that's him. And then my other cousin, who's a bit older, she's 14, and she's not really a video gamer, to be honest. But she's obviously someone who's always up for a video game if she's at someone's house or something. So she's got a lot of friends who she has played sort of the Wii with Wii Sports,
Totally.
and she's played Smash Brothers and Mario Kart and those kind of multiplayer experiences. So she has a little bit of knowledge, but she doesn't think she's very good at video games, and she's not totally as into them as my younger cousin. So
Sure.
so yeah,
Yeah.
those are their profiles, I
All
guess.
right. Well, I guess I have a relatively similar setup to you, as it were, in terms of cousins. My youngest cousin, who I've been doing a lot of kind of stuff with when I was down in London, he's 8 years old, so a little bit younger than yours, but definitely still into games and very kind of finding his feet, as it were, into what he likes and all that stuff. So he doesn't really own any consoles. He doesn't have access to a computer, and he doesn't have access to handhelds or anything. The main form of games that he has access to are through the devil, as we call the tablet devices,
Face.
the iPad, not Facebook games. God no, he's far too young to
No,
have
I said face palm, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay. No, I mean, like, there is a level below iPad games, and of course, Facebook games, which I was gonna say, but
Yes.
no, he's big into iPad stuff. No matter what it is, his main vice is FIFA. He's just a football nut. He knows an insane amount about football and is just fucking crazy about it. So that is what he spends a lot of time doing, and he's on FIFA all the time and doesn't stop. And I'm really fascinated by it because he has found he's kind of been growing up in this era of touch gaming, right? And stuff with virtual buttons and virtual analog sticks, and I really don't understand how he does it, but he plays the game with such ease using a virtual analog stick and using virtual buttons. And
It
you know,
feels horrible.
I know it does. To me, it seems insane and horrible, and there's no tactile feedback. There's none of that. And I have railed against this type of game so many times on the podcast, and I am not a fan of it, and I really don't want to see it in our future. But, you know, if young kids are growing up to be game developers and are starting on these devices, then we may see a day when, that may come. Which, I don't particularly think will be the case, because I think a lot of kids who are really into games will know what the good stuff is, and they'll be influenced by that as opposed to, your tablet stuff. But yeah, he's really on the ball with it, pardon the pun, with FIFA and everything, and is really down with that stuff. So that was mainly his stuff. My other cousin, who's his sister, who's a little bit older, doesn't play games too often. She will sometimes, back and forth with him on the iPad for certain stuff like, Cut the Rope or Temple Run or all these kind of throwaway, free games that they go back and forth with. So she's there, and she kind of sometimes likes stuff. And when I brought out some of the multiplayer stuff, she was down to play as well. So yeah, I guess that's the main experience that they have with games at this point in time. So yeah, I guess we can start talking about what we played with them and what we introduced to them.
So how we tried to indoctrinate them.
Yeah, I guess, to some degree, sure.
Well, for me, I started off by just saying to them, right, look, I own all these games, you pick, we'll play, I don't mind, let's just play whatever you want to play. And for my younger cousin, who was more keen on games, like I said, his first two picks were the big franchise names. So, like I said, he's obsessed by Pokemon, and he's a massive Star Wars fan. So his first two games out of my pretty wealthy games collection were two GameCube titles, Star Wars Rebel Strike and Pokemon Colosseum, which is actually a game I never owned. I actually borrowed it from someone a long time ago and never gave it back. So I've never actually played Pokemon Colosseum, but he basically, I think he was getting confused between Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon Stadium, because on the previous visit we had played quite a bit of Pokemon Stadium together, and he did enjoy that. So we did play a bit of that. But yeah, so we played quite a lot of Star Wars Rebel Strike, which has a great co-op mode. With the original Rogue Squadron on GameCube, Rogue Squadron 2, which was a launch GameCube game. So there's a co-op mode of that game in Rebel Strike that we played together. And, he's pretty good. Like, he enjoyed it. It was really, we got to a level that was incredibly tough.
That game in general has a high difficulty curve. I actually picked it up recently, second hand. The second game, Rogue Squadron 2, which is only in co-op in Rogue Squadron 3, as I understand, is what you said.
Yeah, so Rebel Strike is Rogue Squadron 3, yes, and the Rogue Squadron 1 was on N64.
Right, yeah. So I have Rogue Squadron 2, and I've played it a couple of times, but the missions are kind of really difficult, and I haven't, tried to bang my head against a wall to beat it. But
we kind of got our way through the games. I think he's actually a very good gamer, and I was really impressed. Like, he hung in there. It was frustrating, but he sort of said, "Come on, no, we can do it. We can do this mission." And like we team up and sort out tactics. I'd be like, "You shoot that, I shoot this. You do this, I do that," and we were really using teamwork and working together. It was really good. And then after a while, he was just kind of like, "Come on, let's play Pokemon Stadium." We played Pokemon Stadium, a game which I'm a little bit tired of Pokemon Stadium. I don't know. We played an awful lot of it when we were younger, NBZ.
And it's a very different perspective on it now, with the knowledge of playing competitively. Although it is somewhat different because the mechanics are very different in those games. They're based on the first and second gen.
Yes. So the typings of physical and special moves exactly. Yeah. So then I basically said to him, "Have you ever played Super Smash Brothers?" And he said, "Yeah, I think I've played it a bit." So because we just played the GameCube, we just got out Melee.
Sure.
And I was thinking, right, what do I do? He's never played Smash Brothers before. How do I have a fun time with him and I don't just kick his butt and he doesn't get depressed that I'm just constantly beating him, and we can but I still want him to play this game so he can get better and eventually beat me. So he obviously wanted to main Pikachu, and that kind of works. That worked quite suitably because Pikachu's quite an easy character to pick up and play with. He's quite a simple move set, and that was great. And so what we did was we got in teams. He was really keen to play with me, so we played a couple of games where we played co-op together against a couple of computers, and we did okay because we didn't put the computers too hard. But then I thought, right,
What level did you rack him up to?
we cranked those computers to beat the two of them only like 6 or 7 or 8.
Okay, that's not too bad.
But I'm now at the stage where I can like beat computers online.
Yeah,
like
easily.
On Super Smash Brothers Melee. So after that, we split up into 2 separate teams. So we'd have a computer on our team each. And my computer was much weaker than his computer, and this worked out perfectly because I could fight as hard as I wanted, and I knew that I was still up against it to try and beat him and his computer because he was mashing the damn bees. I should say that he specifically said initially, without me saying a word, he said, "Can we play without items?" And I was like, wow. Wow. He's like on my wavelength. I was like, why do you want to play without items? He's like, oh, because it'll just be too much to think about and too much to learn. Like,
right.
He's really keen to like just learn from step by step from the bottom up, and I really liked that.
That's what I was thinking about, is that when you're trying to introduce someone to Smash Brothers, it actually is generally a good idea to turn items off because the chaos that ensues with all of those makes it really quite difficult to keep track of your character if you don't know what is happening. So definitely a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So we did a lot of matches like that, and then eventually he discovered the Pokeball weapon, and so we did a lot of matches where we made the rule like you're not allowed to attack each other, or you're allowed. We only played with Pokeballs on, and all you were. So that was good fun, and he's obviously a massive Pokemon fan, and that Smash Brothers went down a treat. I mean, other than Smash Brothers, multiplayer game wise, Mario Kart was less of a success, mainly because of that issue I described with Smash Brothers that I was worried about. Is that I was just worried I'd beat him all the time, and I beat him at Mario Kart, and he was a bit like, oh, well, you're always going to beat me at this.
Just like how I feel.
yeah, exactly. But he really sort of appreciated how good of a game Mario Kart 8 was on the Wii U, but he just didn't want to play it. He wanted to play Smash Brothers because he had such a good time on that. So we played a bit of the Wii version, Brawl.
Yeah.
But with my save file being on the Wii U, it was a bit of an issue because he liked the GameCube pad. Like he couldn't play Smash Brothers without the GameCube pad.
Good lad.
Already within a few hours of playing Smash Brothers, he had to play with no items. I should also add, he only liked the flat stages. So his favorite stages were Pokemon Stadium, Corneria, and Final Destination. He hated playing on any other stages, especially stages with whole like pits in the middle, like the Super Mario Bros. Stage and stuff like that. So other than those games, we tried out a bit of Nintendo Land, and that went down a treat with both of my cousins because it had some great 3-player games that we could do. We did a lot of Zelda, a bit of Mario Chase, and the Luigi's Mansion one. They both worked pretty well 3 players. And then I felt like I really wanted to try and get him into a single player, like meaty Nintendo experience. So I was like, what could I do? So I knew he had a DS Lite, and I wanted to give him something where he'd have the option of potentially just borrowing the game from me for a long time, like go away back to Canada. He's from Canada, so go back to Canada, play this game, and let me know later down the line, like, oh yeah, I really like that. So I was like, right, you need to try some Legend of Zelda, and he sort of was like, well, Legend of what? He hadn't heard of the Legend of Zelda, so I was like, right.
Kids these days, what are they doing?
Exactly. So he had his DS Lite. So I thought I have 3 Zelda games that work on a DS Lite. I've got Minish Cap, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. I put all 3 of them in front of him, and I said, right, I'm really keen that you try out one of these games, like start a new file and see what you think of it. And he was like, okay, I'll try it. So he said, which one should I try? And I suggested, out of those 3 games, I've not actually completed Minish Cap, and I know that it's got quite a hard ending. So I thought Phantom Hourglass is a bit frustrating. So I said Spirit Tracks. I completed it late last year, and it's a really solid game. So I said, right, try that. And he was like what did he describe it? He described it in a really funny way. He said like, oh, this is a bit like an RPG or something. I think he
Right.
said. And I was like, yeah, it's got RPG elements for sure.
Yeah.
And then so he didn't like get that invested like in the story or anything. He wasn't that interested in it, and like it didn't click with him immediately. And like he got up to the first dungeon. I don't think he did the first dungeon, but yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason. Like I was over his shoulder a lot of the time he was playing it, and like helped him out with a couple of puzzles that he got a bit stuck on, but I don't know, he just wasn't enjoying it. And I think part of that was that he kind of saw me sitting there thinking, I'd rather just be playing Smash Brothers with you. Why am I playing this game by myself? It's pointless, blah, blah, blah. He was really into playing some multiplayer games with me. So I can understand that. So yeah, I had some ups and downs with games that they wanted to play. Definitely Smash Brothers was the biggest success, and the Melee, not Brawl, I should say. So
Interesting.
yeah, what were some of your more successful and less successful experiments?
I'll get onto that in a second. I was just wondering, you didn't want to sit him down and like show him a console Zelda, like if you were playing it, or like sit him down and show him Wind Waker HD and start show him as you played or something like that to give him a bit more of the spectacle of the larger scale Zelda.
Yeah, I wish I had sat down and just maybe started a new game of Wind Waker HD like with him,
Yeah.
where either of us could have the controller and it could be like a a cooperative experience almost. But he really wasn't keen on it. He was just like, I was like, why don't we play Zelda? And he goes, is it multiplayer? And I go, it's not multiplayer. But maybe I should have just marketed it to him better by saying, actually, yeah, we could play it together.
I mean, interestingly enough, you could make that pseudo multiplayer by handing him the gamepad and allowing him to do some sort of item management and map management and all that stuff, and you could play on the Pro Controller and do the actual important stuff, and he could kind of be a secondary navigator, as it were.
I didn't know you could do that with Wind Waker HD.
I'm pretty sure you can, because you can play it with the Pro Controller and still have the bottom screen. I think.
Yeah.
Although that may not be possible.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had tried that, but I think it was always an uphill battle. By me being there, he just really wanted to play multiplayer games, and that the hook of Smash Brothers had genuinely hooked him. Like, he was really keen to play that more so than anything. And then I'd say after that, Star Wars Rebel Strike cooperative was probably the most successful after that.
All right.
So yeah,
cool.
I wish I had tried maybe a bit of Wind Waker HD or something, but oh well.
Oh well,
Next
indeed.
time.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk about some of the stuff that I showed to my cousins. I guess the interesting thing is that they, having not had any consoles or not really been around any handhelds or anything like that before, are always really interested and fascinated when I come to London, because I bring my bag of goodies, which I have literally everything with me.
The magic NBZ with all his games.
Yeah, I do. So I bring my bag and I have everything, and we're at my grandparents' house, and they live pretty nearby there, so they come around quite often. And I had my Wii U this time because I wanted to take it down and finish Xenoblade, and then I had some other stuff on then, Wario Land, Shake Dimension for Wii. So I had a lot of stuff, and I brought down Mario Kart, I brought down Smash and all that stuff. So they always like, oh man, let me look at that. Let me look at this screen you're playing on, because I had the Wii U gamepad, and it's very interesting because it's this weird contraption, this controller they've, I guess, never seen before, but can relate to in some way because they've had iPads and it does look like a pseudo tablet. And so I think the first thing I'll talk about is Mega Man 2, which is really an interesting one, because you're like, wait, what are you doing? You're giving an 8-year-old Mega Man 2? Doesn't that sound insane? To some degree, yes, but I guess back in the day, a lot of 8-year-olds were playing that sort of style of game and trying to better themselves and get through these really tough platformers. And so, yeah, I basically got that out because I had recently bought it and I was wanting to finish it. And as you heard a couple of weeks ago on the show, I did indeed complete Mega Man 2, and I was successful in that. But a part of that, while I was kind of in the middle of being sick and everything, my cousin was over and he was like, oh, this game looks really cool and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this game's really old. It's older than me. And he was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. So, and he wanted to play it. So I was like, you know what? screw it, I'll give you the gamepad. You can take this game and try it out yourself and see how you do. So I sent him on his way, and he started going through some levels, and he was having a hard time because first of all, it's Mega Man 2, and it's a fucking difficult game when you're an 8-year-old. But secondly, he doesn't have a huge amount of experience with traditional controllers and buttons and being able to do that kind of stuff. So it's really funny because he would take the gamepad and he'd kind of go between using the analog stick and the D-pad, and he didn't quite know which one to do, and I kept telling him, use the D-pad, it's easy to do it, it's much more effective and responsive. So he was doing that for a bit, and there's a part at the very beginning of Bubble Man stage, which you'll probably remember, Bally, having played Mega Man 2, with the frogs, and this giant frogs spitting out small frogs, and there are gaps you have to jump across, and it's very much a mix of being able to jump while simultaneously firing. And that's something he had trouble with, because his fingers are kind of small, and it's hard for him to do both at the same time and do it quickly. So what he would end up doing is moving himself into position with the D-pad, and then he would take his left hand, from that side and take it to the other side of the controller and use a finger from each hand, one to jump and one to shoot. And I was like, wait a second, what are you doing? This isn't how you play video games. He's using two hands on one side of the gamepad. It was really funny, and I kind of got a hold of it, and I was like, no, this is how you hold it. This is this is what you should be doing. And he kept going, and I was kind of just chilling and watching him in the background. And he went through a couple of different stages and kept dying and losing, and he got to, I believe it was Flashman stage. And he was doing pretty well. I think that stage is quite amenable for beginners because, first of all, there are no pits to fall into. That's a big one. If there's endless pits, then you're dying instantly. It doesn't matter how much health you have, you fall down and you're gone and you're dead. So there weren't many of those. The enemies weren't too challenging and there weren't too many of them. And it was kind of something that he could wrap his head around. So, he got set on that one and he got pretty far. He got actually to the checkpoint of it, which I was surprised by. I was like, wow, he did pretty well there. And after that one, he did a few more. He actually ended up going through all the Robot Masters and didn't beat any of them, of course. He just died a lot. But in the end, he was like, I want to go back and do that Flashman stage again, because that was the one he was good at. So I set him on his way, and within about 10-15 minutes, he'd managed to get to the end of the stage. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. I'm kind of shocked that he was able to do that. And not only that, but he had enough lives to where he went into the boss room, died really quickly, but he did it again, and he beat the boss. So, having started, no idea what to do, never seen this game before, having, never really touched a game controller, to completing a whole Robot Master level and beating a boss in Mega Man 2, I was really impressed, and I thought that was super cool. So I marked that down as a big achievement for him in his, I guess, gaming life, as it were. So that was awesome, and he was pretty proud of himself. So I was pretty pleased with that.
That is pretty incredible, actually. Especially with Mega Man 2.
Yeah, it really did shock me. It kind of knocked me off my feet, and I took a picture of it and put it on Twitter, and I was like, "This is a really cool moment." So I was really impressed. Aside from that, there are a lot of kind of multiplayer stuff that we were doing. Going back to the iPad, interestingly enough, there are a couple of really great games that you can get on iPad. One of them, which I'm a pretty big evangelist of, is, of course, Hearthstone. And Hearthstone's a pretty complicated game, right? It's a card game, it has a lot of rules, it has a lot of different aspects to it. But the thing about it is it has a fantastic tutorial mode where very easily, step by step, walks you through how to play, what the different elements are and what the different mechanics are, and is something that actually works pretty well for even a younger audience. So I went over to their house and they have an iPad there, and I was like, hey, let me show you this cool game on iPad. So I went in, I downloaded Hearthstone for them, and I just set them on their way. I kind of guided them through the first couple of training areas and then set them off to go in the next couple. And it was really cool because they were both kind of trying to work together. They both had the iPad in between them, and they were trying to make key decisions like, oh, should we play this card now, or should we wait until that guy does that, and how we have enough mana points to play this card. And it was really interesting interesting because they were kind of discussing it together, like having that competitive mindset, and then making the final decisions and going through with it and kind of learning from their mistakes and all that good stuff. And I think that's really fun. And it's a complicated game, and it's one that I think they need a little bit more guidance on if they wanted to get into it. But it's something that's accessible to them now, and it's a high quality product, and it's a damn sight better than Flappy Bird, I'll tell you what. So that's a good one. And I tell you what, Bally, if they can play Hearthstone, you damn well can. So,
yeah, I know.
So I would say, you should.
I need to play Hearthstone and Mega Man 2.
You do, yeah. They're both on the list. So that was really cool. I don't think they'll go back to it until I get back down to London at some point and help them out a bit more, but. It was just interesting from the perspective of, watching them sit there and puzzle things out and try and figure out how to beat their opponents. So that was awesome. The next one was dumb because I had my laptop and I had installed Dive Kick on there, which, if you don't know what Dive Kick is, it is one of the most hilariously stupid games in the history of the universe. So it's a 2-button fighting game in which you jump and you basically dive
and you kick.
You dive and you kick. And each round, basically, if you connect a hit, the opposing player is dead. So it's a one-hit KO for everything, and you go through like 5 rounds. It's a lot of fun, and I've played it with my sister in the car a bunch, down on the journey from London, because it's like 7 hours that we have to do, and it's just an easy time killer. So what I did is I hooked it up to the TV through a cable, and got out my Xbox 360 controller, plugged that in, and sat them both down on a chair, and was like, here's the controller. You have one side, you have the other side, you use a shoulder button and a face button, and I got both of them to play each other at Dive Kick, and it was stupid fun, and they kind of enjoyed it a lot, and it was just a nice, easy thing to do. And it's just one of those games that you can get into instantly and understand really quickly what goes on. If you even understand the basics of any sort of fighting game, then getting into Dive Kick is no bother. It's just an in and out, and so they really enjoyed that. They had good fun with that. And then I guess we get to the more traditional things, like you were playing Mario Kart 8, and I got out the Wii remotes for this because them being a little bit younger, and I guess having gone over to their friends' houses and maybe played Mario Kart Wii before, they were more used to using that control scheme of turning
Wii remotes on their side.
Yeah, basically, and
Okay.
I think that works the best for their age, because at that age, they're going to, no matter what controller you give them, they're going to intuitively turn it anyway. Like, they just have that inbuilt thing where they're just like, yeah, I'm kind of, moving this.
I remember you were very guilty for that with many driving games.
I was indeed. I always used to do that. I would hold the controller and tilt it, and, lo and behold.
And puff your cheeks up with air.
Right, I was just getting concentrated, I had to focus. So lo and behold, that's what they were doing, and so I gave them that, and and just had a couple of sessions of Mario Kart, and I put them on.
Was it a success?
Yeah, it was a pretty good success. I think the boy cousin, he was getting a little bit bored of it, and his older sister wanted to play more. So he was like, "Oh, I want to play something else. I want to do something else." So we did that for a while, and they did pretty well. I put it onto 50cc so that they could kind of feel good about themselves, and it ended up that he was always coming in first, and then she was actually doing pretty well. She was getting up the ranks there, and she ended up getting like some third places, some fourth places. So that was good, and I kind of saw that as a success for them. And then I decided, you know what, let's put on Smash Brothers and see what happens. Now, I didn't have my Wii or my GameCube. I only had my Wii U, so of course I didn't have access to any GameCube controllers. The only controllers I really had were the Classic Controller Pro and the Wii Remote. And so I basically gave them both a Wii Remote and was like,
"Oh God,
just go." And I didn't really tell them much. I said, here are the basics. Here's your punch button. Here's your special. You can press up to jump, because that's how it works on that. I was like, go. And it was a mess. It was pretty much an
Yeah.
unmitigated disaster. I turned off items, I put them on Final Destination, and let them have a bit of a bash at it, but they really couldn't even get their heads around it. It's a little bit too complicated for them to even understand and try and work through. So Smash Brothers kind of was a bit of a flop, but it was it was a weird, frustrating fun watching them, because I was just like venting like, oh my god, this is just the most horrifying thing to watch in the world. But then again, it was kind of just super silly and everything, in the way that Smash Brothers usually is. So yeah, I got them on that.
Do you think your cousins will buy a console when they're a little older?
I think maybe. I'm not quite sure. This current point in time, I don't. Their parents are kind of against games. I get the feeling. So
But they find them anyway. That's the thing with these iPads.
right, exactly. That's the thing. And I don't think. It's an interesting era we live in, because I don't think a lot of parents associate the iPad with video games in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
They'll see a PlayStation and they'll be like, "Oh, that is a horrible thing. I'm never buying that for my kid. That's not for them. They don't want to play video games." And they go back home and their kid's sitting there playing Cut the Rope, and it's like, there is a difference there, and there is a distinct difference in quality and style and everything, but it's a game. It's fundamentally still a video game,
Yeah.
and yet one they shun and the other they just turn the other face to. It's weird.
One hilarious story that my cousin kept telling me. So he's my second cousin. His mum's my cousin. He always says, "Oh, but when I'm at home, Mum says that's enough games for today." And then later after dinner, I catch Mum playing solitaire on her phone, and he gets really annoyed about the fact that she's gaming when he's not allowed to game. And I just find it funny that you're right. A lot of parents have this misinformed, ultimately, idea that games have to be on a game system, and everything that's not on a game system can't be a game. It's always something else or something better.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It's one of those things that will change with time as people who play games get older and eventually become parents themselves. And the face of all this stuff will move on, and we won't have to deal with those issues anymore. But for the time being, yes, that's a thing that we unfortunately have to see. So yeah, I mean, we've gone quite a long time talking about this topic, but
Yeah,
what do you think about games for younger kids these days? We were kind of discussing before about how, Nintendo, as it were, don't have as big a place in the market for their console stuff as they used to, and so, before, on the previous generation with Wii, I think a lot of kids were getting in on the ground floor for games through that platform. With Wii U, it doesn't seem like it's doing the job, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't see Xbox or PlayStation catering to that younger crowd either. So it does seem that the handheld space is where it's all at, and if kids are going to be getting games, it's either going to be on a phone or on a tablet, or at this point on 3DS. It seems like the dominant platform.
Yeah, I mean, what we've already said, I think, rings true, is that parents don't see games on laptops and iPads in the same way they do as on, say, a 3DS or a DS. And for example, my cousin, I think his mum's a little uneasy about buying games potentially for his DS, and but she kind of just turns a blind eye to some extent, with all the gaming on his laptop. So it's kind of a tricky situation, and I mean the biggest loser in that situation, I guess, is Nintendo to some degree, because they have a whole wealth of games designed for the DS, DS Lite in his case, and then he's going and playing World of Tanks, and then I don't know, and in many ways that's a more violent game than any of the games he'd ever be playing on the DS.
Sure,
So it's kind of like it's hard to. And he's not my kid, and it's not my decision, so it's hard to speak on that front. But it's I don't know, it's a tricky situation, and I know that when I was younger, it was often an uphill battle persuading my parents that I want to play this game, I want to buy this system, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I never really played many violent games, if any, when I was younger, and I think my parents always did have a sort of solace with Nintendo to some degree, because they knew that, okay, we've got them the GameCube, we've got them the N64. They by and large don't have many violent games, and we won't let them buy the violent games, I guess. And that was just kind of how it was. And I played loads of fantastic games on those systems, and I guess that's just not carried over in the same way. I mean, our cousins are even slightly too young to have remembered or been old enough to play games with the Wii Sports era, which was actually a massive opportunity for a lot of people to just get into gaming, because they'd own a Wii system and then they'd say, let's. I mean, this was a minority of Wii owners by and large, believe me, but they'd say like, well, maybe let's try Mario Galaxy or Zelda Twilight Princess or something else.
Right, and then branch out from that point.
Exactly, and those are very child-friendly games. Yes, there's a little bit of violence in Zelda to some degree, but I mean, those games are fantastic, high-quality games that just in my opinion, completely blow games like, I don't know, World of Tanks or FIFA on an iPad out of the water. But I mean, that's coming from a Nintendo fan, so I don't know. It's definitely very different to the gaming environments that we were used to growing up, and how we got into kind of gaming and Nintendo gaming in general.
Yeah, and I mean, with games like Minecraft being readily available on platforms like the PC, on laptops and on iPads, kids are really into that stuff, and they're gonna keep following wherever it goes. And Nintendo didn't lock it down. Can you imagine a world when Nintendo got the console exclusivity on Minecraft? It may well be a different place we are living in. And if you take a look at the Wii U, it's almost perfect for that. The infrastructure with the touchscreen and the stylus setup and being able to place blocks, it seems like a no-brainer, right? But I guess the wrong people were, they weren't there at the right time.
It really feels like there's a massive disconnect from the era of our cousins that we're talking about and the Wii U, and it's just like there are all these fantastic games on that system that would suit an audience like theirs just as much as it would suit us as slightly older Nintendo fans. And it's just like, just marry the two up, and then you would sell more Wii U's, there'd be more kids happy, we could solve world hunger. Yeah.
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but
exactly.
Sure, I get your point. Well, I think we've covered that pretty extensively and expensively, if you want to count all the money we spent on the games. But yeah, that I guess for you guys at home, that's a little bit of a look at our game playing habits of people, younger people around us. And hey, hopefully you found it entertaining.
Tell us about your cousins and family and younger gamers and their gaming habits, because we're intrigued.
Yeah, certainly. And you can send all of that correspondence, of course, to our email address, which is Bally.
NYPPQuestions@gmail.com. And I say this every week, but remember to tell us where you're from, because it's great to know.
It is, and we do need a lot of emails. We're running low. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel. So get those in. We want more emails. We would love to hear from new listeners. As always, if you've never written in, but you've been listening to the show for a while, we'd love to hear some new voices on here and all that good stuff. So
and tell us, and I'd be interested to know, tell us what segments you've liked over the last few episodes. We've done different segment for the final third segment almost every show, really. So tell us which ones you like, whether it's talking about our cousins and younger gamers or something like the jukebox. Did that work out well? So we need to know what you guys like so we can do more of it for the future.
Indeed. Keep that correspondence coming. You can of course keep up with us and what we are doing during the breaks between episodes on the internet by following us on the social medias. So you can catch me over on Twitter. I am at Lordnbz, and if you are a Miiverse user, you can find me on that platform also, with Lordnbz being my name as well. So yeah, keep following me there. What about you, Bally?
And on Twitter, I am at Ballyman91, BALLYMAN 91. And that is also my name on the Miiverse. I'm going to be playing a bit of Trine 2, an indie game. So I'll be posting a lot of beautiful screenshots from that incredibly good-looking game.
Oh, it's gorgeous! I tell you what.
Hopefully, be talking about next time. So
excellent! It's a fantastic, fantastic game, and glad you picked it up because I think very highly of it. So
it was on sale.
Yeah, indeed.
Impulse buy.
Yeah, gotta get down with those impulse buys. They are important.
Oh, and wait until I get talking about impulse buys, but we'll save that for another time.
They are the cause of my extensive backlog, but you know that all too well. Yes, of course, you can leave us some reviews on iTunes as well if you would be so kind. We haven't had any recently, but that's okay. We'd love to get some more, and do keep sending those in because we really appreciate it, and it would help us get up those iTunes rankings so that we can conquer the charts and complete our domination of the podcasting space. So if you want to go ahead and do that, please do. Feel free. And I guess that's pretty much it. Anything else you want to say here, Bally, before we close out the show?
I guess next time we are speaking, we will know the full Smash Brothers roster. And yeah.
Oh, we will indeed. It's going to be a hell of a week for Smash Brothers fans. This is.
And yeah, Hyrule Warriors coming out now, so I guess loads of reviews are going to go up for that soon.
Yeah.
So.
It's going to be interesting.
A lot of change before next time.
Definitely, and we hope to be talking all about it with you, and all the good stuff. So thank you very much for listening. We will be back at you again in a couple of weeks' time. But until then, this is us, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. The musical interludes used in today's show were the Star Wolf theme from Star Fox 64 3D, copyright 2011 Nintendo, and the Mega Man 2 medley from Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U, copyright 2014 Nintendo and Capcom. Alright.
What episode are we on? 22, I think.
22!
22!
Today I noticed on Twitter that Taylor Swift has 43 million followers, and her Twitter handle is still Taylor Swift 13. You'd think that if you're Taylor Swift, you could get the Twitter handle at Taylor Swift, but no, she's Taylor Swift 13. So
that is funny.